Everyone talks about the guns. Almost no one talks about the bullets. How do cartel arsenals in Mexico stay stocked with tens of millions of rounds when there's no civilian ammo market down there in the first place? In this video, we'll talk about the invisible ammo corridor running straight out of American sporting goods stores and into cartel bunkers, and how it's managed to fly under the radar for years. We're going deep into how this pipeline works, what agencies already know but won't say, and why this isn't just a Mexico problem. It's fueling chaos that bleeds into U.S. towns and ranches. You'll see how straw buyers, abandoned ranch houses, and even drones are all part of a logistics network more sophisticated than most people imagine. This isn't about taking aim at lawful gun owners. It's about exposing the loopholes cartels are exploiting while the media stays silent. Because if we don't talk about it, the bad guys keep winning. The sun comes up over the Rio Grande the same way it always has, but the air feels different when you know how much brass and powder slip past the river every single week. On cable news, the ticker flashes stories about migrant surges, fentanyl loads, and yet another cartel ambush, but nearly no one talks about the ammunition that powers all of it. Local deputies in Webb and Santa Cruz counties shake their heads when they tally empty shelves at sporting goods stores, knowing the numbers in their notebooks will never make a primetime Chiron. ATF agents file reports of ammo thefts and bulk buys that look perfectly legal on paper, then watch those lines of text vanish into archives the public never reads. Meanwhile, a minivan with dark tint glides through the outbound lane at Eagle Pass or Nogales. A polite young driver rolls down the window, answers a question or two, and disappears into Tamaulipas loaded with cartons of shiny 223. The retail end of the pipeline couldn't look more mundane. Academy Sports runs a sale. Bass Pro knocks a few bucks off a case, and a smiling customer whose ID checks out grabs half a pallet. Nobody stops him because nothing in federal law limits how many rounds a shopper can toss onto a credit card. Clerks see hobbyists plunk down for an upcoming carbine class all the time. Yet follow the receipts, and you find patterns. The same handful of drivers bounce from San Antonio to Corpus Christi, sweeping shelves, then meeting at a rented warehouse only blocks from I-35. Inside, shrink-wrap machines hum. Barcodes vanish under layers of black tape, and boxes are sliced flat so they can tuck into ceiling liners. Whenever one runner gets stopped, the others keep moving, and the totals add up faster than anyone in Washington wants to admit. Agents on the ground have known for years that ammunition moves out of the country in spoonfuls, not shovelfuls. 3,000 rounds here, 5,000 rounds there, so small per trip that a busy port barely blinks. The 120,000-round seizure in South Texas proved the math in shocking clarity, because one kid cracked during a roadside chat and spilled the address of a stash house holding 90 more cases. Multiply that confession by all the runners who kept their mouths shut, and you start approaching the Department of Homeland Security's quiet estimate. Tens of millions of rounds cross the border every year, most of it never seen by an X-ray machine. Ammunition simply doesn't trigger export alarms the way rifles do. Cartridges carry no serial numbers, and the law treats a case of Wolf Gold the same as a carton of hammers unless it's listed on a manifest. Inside the agencies, there's frustration bordering on resignation. Operation Gunrunner targeted firearms trafficking but left ammunition classed as a secondary concern. Internal emails obtained through FOIA show field supervisors begging for manpower to run southbound portals more than once a month. The directives always came back the same: focus on fentanyl, meth, bodies, then, if time permits, look for bullets. Border Patrol line agents joke that they can tell when headquarters wants a good press release because outbound checks suddenly surge for 48 hours, cameras roll, then everyone goes back to business as usual until the next high-profile bust. Even when loads are seized, the paperwork often stops at possession of ammunition without a license, or a simple smuggling charge rather than a broader conspiracy case, which means no investigative teeth sink into the network behind the driver. Those networks, though, are sophisticated. Cartel logisticians learned early that ammo stacks denser than weed bricks and draws less canine attention than cocaine. They've buried polymer-sealed tubes beneath fence lines, stuffed pelican cases under false floors of abandoned ranch sheds, and installed clever magnet latch panels in SUV roofs. One coyote moves migrants on Monday, another drops ammo at the same waypoint on Wednesday, the GPS pin identical. Resupply happens closer to the border fence than to any city checkpoint. So even if Mexican customs catches a van half a mile south, the payload often ends up back in play because local police lack secure evidence lockers or simply collect a payoff to look the other way. Why does 223 or 556 dominate the manifests? It's the same reason NATO standardized on it. Light recoil lets barely trained shooters stay on target. A rifleman can haul double the load compared with old AK ammo. Spare parts, uppers, braces, and suppressors bolt on with a couple of Allen keys. Cartel gunsmiths chop 16-inch carbines to 10 inches, thread a flash can, and pass them to hitmen who film urban raids for Telegram. The optics matter almost as much as lethality. Waving an AR pattern rifle with an EO-Tech screams modern power far louder than a rusty Mauser ever could. In Jalisco or Tamaulipas, the Marines use this caliber, the U.S. Army also uses this caliber. Therefore, the cartel that flashes it claims the same prestige. That psychological edge fuels recruiting videos and intimidation reels that local police watch on confiscated phones after another patrol truck has been torched. Ammunition fetches a premium south of the border precisely because civilians can't walk into a store to buy it. Mexico maintains one official outlet inside a military base, a labyrinth of paperwork, caliber restrictions, and waiting periods so long that only the well-connected bother. Demand doesn't vanish. It simply slides underground where each 50-round box jumps from $15 to $100. A single van load nets a runner more profit than hauling migrants, with far less risk of a felony kidnapping charge. Every round smuggled in becomes leverage, control of a neighborhood, enforcement of extortion payments, or simple dominance in intercartel firefights that last longer when magazines don't run dry. Profits like that invite help from both sides of the river. Straw buyers inside the United States exploit loopholes that politicians won't close. A background check clears. The clerk hands over cases, and off they go. Pawn shops move second-hand ammo with even fewer eyes watching. Warehouse managers on the border shave off inventory and mark it damaged. In Mexico, the corruption problem compounds the supply. Soldiers desert with rifles and ammo by the pallet. Police inventories leak thousands of sidearms without paperwork. Combine internal leaks with cross-border deliveries, and cartels wind up better supplied than some Central American armies. Blaming an American manufacturer for that reality, as Mexico did in its lawsuit against Smith & Wesson, made no legal sense. The Supreme Court refused to revive the claim because the chain of causation shattered the moment a legitimate product passed into criminal hands. One traffic stop that traced boxes back to perfectly legal retail counters illustrated why liability ends at the point where criminal intent begins. Yet the court decision hasn't slowed the talking point machine. Activists keep pumping the 90% statistic, repeatedly stating that almost all cartel firearms trace back to the United States, even though Inspector General audits suggest the real share might be barely over 10%. The figure stays inflated because only guns suspected to be of U.S. origin are submitted to the ATF's e-trace system. The rest, Soviet RPKs shipped through El Salvador, Chinese drum-fed AKs routed via Guatemala, ex-Mexican Army G3 rifles, never enter the American database, so they vanish from the headline number. Ammo tells a similar story. Cases marked Aguila, Barnal, or CBC from Brazil slide through ports hidden among legitimate imports. When foreign rounds show up at a crime scene, no one points to U.S. retailers, but when Lake City brass litter a street after a shootout, blame boomerangs across the border. The disparity in coverage reveals the bigger failure. Federal agencies at home are slow to address outbound contraband, and lawmakers prefer sweeping domestic bans to tackling porous checkpoints. Every new attempt to restrict magazine capacity or rifle features generates press, but not one major network devotes airtime to why only a fraction of southbound vehicles meet a canine team. Political capital is easier to earn by lecturing suburban collectors than by staffing a midnight outbound lane or funding rural prosecutors who tackle straw purchase syndicates. As long as that remains true, the flow of cartridges will continue regardless of how many new firearm statutes Congress prints. Consequences already ripple through American communities. When the Cartel del Noreste decides to intimidate a ranch on the Texas side, it doesn't need to smuggle rifles, it only sends gunmen who cross the river with loaded mags in Ziploc bags. Authorities in Kinney County have reported engagements where shell casings match lots sold months earlier in Houston. In Arizona, Teen runners ferry both fentanyl and ammo, sometimes on the same night, because customers on each end pay cash. Those kids aren't master criminals. Many think they're on a quick payday and, if caught, believe juvenile court will go easy. That misconception makes them perfect recruits. When Guadalupe Ramirez of CBP described finding a rifle stuffed inside the pants of a minor, the story illustrated cartel cynicism. Send the youngest mule because prosecutors might hesitate. The longer Washington downplays the ammunition corridor, the more professional the smugglers become. They add trick compartments with hydraulic lifts, line them with mylar to beat x-rays, and time crossings to coincide with shift changes. Some loads move by drone, dropping 10-pound bundles inside Mexico for pickup crews with off-road bikes. Others sail over an amphibious unmanned craft that follow pre-programmed GPS tracks. Technology cuts manpower needs, limits arrests, and makes a relentless stream of small shipments harder to quantify even for analysts. One might argue for stricter ammo purchase tracking inside the United States. But consider the logistics. Americans fire billions of rounds a year recreationally. Logging every sale would require databases larger than anything ATF currently runs, and compliance would crater the moment a new rule felt like backdoor registration. Meanwhile, cartels would simply pivot, import from Latin American factories, recycle military stocks, or scavenge every Mexican police bunker they seize. Powder and primer production can't be throttled easily because industrial chemistry tracks are global. So, what can be done? First, outbound inspections must become standard, not seasonal theater. The tools already exist: license plate readers, density meters, handheld fiberscopes, and, of course, trained canines. Agencies need manpower and an unambiguous mandate to give southbound traffic as much scrutiny as northbound traffic. Second, straw purchase penalties ought to carry real teeth. A buyer caught dumping bulk ammo into cartel pipelines deserves more than probation. Third, Congress should fund stateside task forces that integrate local deputies who spot suspicious purchases with federal analysts who can track receipts across counties. The Nogales press conference hinted at this synergy when U.S. Attorney Timothy Corshane committed to punishing even first-offender teens if federal statutes fail. That philosophy needs budget and political cover. Otherwise, the threat of prosecution rings hollow. On the Mexican side, the government must clean its own barracks. Thousands of missing police weapons indicate a leak so large, no foreign policy fix can solve it. Until Mexico secures arsenals and purges commanders on cartel payrolls, every box of American ammo confiscated at the border will be replaced by a case diverted from a municipal armory. International cooperation should include transparent auditing of police inventory and vetted task forces shielded from political interference. The Calderon administration tried a small version of this, and corruption still bled through, but the alternative is surrendering entire states to criminal rule. Finally, information flows need honesty. The public deserves accurate numbers on both firearms and ammo origin. Inflating statistics invites bad solutions and erodes trust. When analysts present a figure, they should release the methodology, sample size, and margin of error so lawmakers can craft policy on solid ground. Cartels will remain dangerous with or without American components, yet denying them convenient access to cheap, plentiful ammunition forces them to expend energy sourcing elsewhere. Every complication buys time for Mexican communities caught in the crossfire and for U.S. border towns already feeling spillover violence. A single case of 223 seems small until you realize a cartel squad can fire 500 rounds in a city block takeover. Multiply that by the 1,000 cases moving each month, and the scope of the problem emerges. We didn't reach this point overnight, and no single measure will drain the pipeline tomorrow. But daylight is the first step. People who care about the Second Amendment should champion transparency, because lawful ownership thrives when criminal supply chains are exposed and punished. Pretending the ammo corridor doesn't exist only hands ammunition, literally and rhetorically, to politicians eager to treat every shooter as a suspect. Instead, confronting the smuggling facts head-on separates citizens exercising rights from traffickers weaponizing loopholes. If straw buyers face certain prison time, if Mexico locks down its own depots, and if media outlets start tracing bullets with the same zeal they trace rifles, the river of smuggled brass can at least be narrowed. That won't end cartel violence, but it will raise their costs and save lives on both sides of the line. Then again, what do I know? Maybe I'm just another pro-Second Amendment guy in this not-so-United States of America. So here's the question. How do you think we stop the ammo pipeline without hammering legal gun owners in the process? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let us know what you're seeing in your state. And while you're here, hit like, share this video, subscribe, and click that bell, because the truth has more rounds coming.